Nate and Rob, how are you guys?
What's up, ladies?
The reason why I asked you all here is you guys have been my guinea pigs over the last couple of years on my curriculum. And the reason why I wanted to have this chat was I wanted to get some real-time thoughts from you guys as I went through a few things. With developing my curriculum, right, I've sent you guys some of the screenshots as I've been making and drawing out things and as I've been getting graphics made and stuff like that. So I just wanted to start off, not everything, but like the main points of what I'm going to be doing for the curriculum. And so as I was explaining earlier in our chat, I'm basically looking to do my curriculum in the Star Wars layout. What did you call it, Rob?
Device framing.
The curriculum is going to start off like intermediate with my episode 4, if you will, and then do my 4, 5, and 6, and then I'm going to go back and do my 1, 2, and 3. And then after that, I'll do my 7, 8, and 9, and maybe some in between. Have something that's a little intermediate, and then work backwards, and then use that stuff to work forwards. And you guys should see that fairly clearly, right?
Clear enough.
Right here is the major shape. This is where I really want to start. You get someone to learn just this shape. The 3 notes per string shape without this note right here. Imagine that doesn't exist. It'll just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting people started on understanding the clock position of the scale. So we have our do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. From there, I plan on going into the minor shape through these 2 shapes to get our fingers used to intervals, and then explaining why those 2 shapes sound differently and go into what is an interval. The importance of an interval being a note gives a distinct feeling, not just based upon the note that you're playing, but it's that relationship compared to the note you just played compared to the note you're about to play, giving you a vibe. Things such as Phrygian sounding like a Spanish love song, or harmonic minor sounding creepy, or Lydian sounding like you're off on a sci-fi quest, those types of things, right? Or blues where you get the tritone in. From there, this is the 7 modes of the major scale, all 7 positions in reference to where they fall in the scale. Now, this image is pointing out the 5 missing notes and where they fall in the scale. So when we play those 7 notes of the diatonic modes, there are 5 out of the 12 notes that we don't play. And each one of those notes is what we will alter to change the characteristics of those 7 modes in order to create other sounds. And anything from this point on would just be deleting intervals to get different sounds. The same way that the pentatonic, you're deleting 2 of the notes from the diatonic modes, and you're getting 5 different positions that have less intervals with more space, effectively changing the sound, even though it has some of those characteristic intervals, such as the 7ths and the 3rd. In reference to the minor, it doesn't have the 2 and the 6. The Mixolydian flat 6. It's basically the Mixolydian mode with a flat 6 in it. And if I were to zoom in,
Yeah.
so right here, this is just a regular Mixolydian pattern, and 9 Inch Nails, they just delete this one note and play and put the blue note in its place. And that's literally the sound of all of 9 Inch Nails is that right there, just deleting.
Reznor,
Yeah, just deleting that note right there. So effectively, it takes this Mixolydian mode and it makes it sound like a minor scale with a major 3rd. But we define things by their 3rd, so it doesn't become that. This whole image here is depicting those 5 extra notes. Now down here in the bottom, I have this image in C major, so you can see how it goes up the string. I'm going to change this image to be in F major, the way that the 7-string one is. The purpose for the 7-string diagram is to show the 7 diatonic modes and where they go, right? We got Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, back to major. But what you get to see is the first 3 notes of major, first 3 notes of Lydian, first 3 notes of Locrian, first 3 notes of Phrygian, first 3 notes of minor, first 3 notes of Dorian, first three notes of Mixolydian, and then the pattern continues on and on. There's going to be another image that's going to promote the idea of these are all the same things but in different clock position. And knowing your parallels, which is when you know the major scale, you know that it's fourth, you know that that's the Lydian mode. So at any time you're shredding in a major key, you can just start playing from the fourth and go up to the 11th, and you can voice a Lydian lead on top of a major.
On top of a major scale, yeah.
Right. All of these here are basically going to be the main points of the first drop of the curriculum. There's going to be a few more visual aids, such as the whole, half, whole, half stagger, and definitely going to include this 3-note per string type thing. That being said, guys, first impressions. Rob, you're top left, so I'm going to ask you first. First impressions of this. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you see? Tell me.
I think it looks good. I think, Nate definitely killed it with the fact that we've kind of started from the beginning with the I don't pick lemons.
My aunt likes. Yeah, that's going to be included in that.
And that definitely I think as long as that theme carries through with it, visually it looks great. I think that's kind of something that we reference, as students still in the kind of, beginning intermittent bit of this course, that's kind of what we reference as our home base. So any visual aids that steer too far off of that immediately, it makes you have to think a little bit more, which isn't a bad thing. Otherwise, I think it looks pretty decent.
Do you have anything else to add based upon this?
No, I think we need to, if we go through it, I'll pepper in anything or chime in with anything. But for the most part, this looks good. I'm also really interested in seeing your circle diagram. Not quite the circle of fifths, but more your circle of how it falls in. Because at first glance,
like a circle of fourths.
Circle of fourths, yeah. It's a little confusing at first, but then when you break it down, it's very, it really is pretty simple.
Nate?
Yeah, it looks great. Colors look great and engaging.
I like that too. He chose good colors.
Yeah, those work really well.
I will tell you, it's all based off of highlighter packs and what's available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what kind of helped me the most, was when I finally understood all of this, was like, okay, once I end the mode, like what if I start in major, right? And then I get down to the last string, it's like, okay, the last string of this, is the first 3 notes of the next mode. That was when things really unraveled for me. It was like, oh my God, I get it.
Yes, and now you see that on the 3-note per string major scale modes image, but that E string grouping of notes is deleted from my missing notes diagrams.
Yeah, you've got it off of that.
If you play the major scale in F major based upon that 3 notes per string major scale modes image,
then
if you play all the way up to the high E string, the high note, what you're really doing, you're not giving the major vibe to it, you're giving the actual Lydian vibe if you end on that note. It's the first 3 notes of the Dorian mode, but it's Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, right? And so I want to try and keep the motif of the feel and the vibe without it being confusing, because I think so much of music is confusing in that way. You think that last note belongs there, and it doesn't.
That was where it all clicked for me. It was like, oh, okay, so instead of hopping down to high E, now I just move up here and I start this pattern from right here. So, and then kind of like back referencing to like, what was the last one I did to the next one I did? Because you kind of need that context of the 2 strings generally, I guess. So,
right, and so along with learning the major scale in 1 octave and then the minor scale in 1 octave, then after that, it's going to be immediately learn all of the 7 modes. And while simultaneously learning the 7 modes, I'm probably going to have breakdowns showing on how the Dorian mode is just a minor mode with 1 note different, right? I have a breakdown of that. How the Phrygian mode is the minor mode, but 1 note different. The Lydian is the major mode, but one note different. And then the Locrian also being the minor mode, but with two different notes, right? And getting used to playing this basic shape with a slight alteration, getting a completely different sound. And then that opens up the door for then taking those missing 5 notes and applying them to these 7 modes to get that same idea. Yes, you could just add it on top of, but if you actually delete another note from the mode while adding in either the blue note, the quest note, the melodic note, the harmonic note, or the dominant note, or a bebop note rather, adding one of those 5 notes in, it will effectively give a different tone and a different vibe if you actually take some of those other intervals and just skip them in reference to one another, right? Because all things in music are only relative. It doesn't matter what you play as long as it sounds good to the thing that you're doing. It gives that confliction or that tension or that release to your overall vibe.
That all looks good with the understanding of you've got to know that major, and then even just kind of having that basic knowledge of like, this is how it all relates. That was what always threw me off before, that I never understood until lessons with you, was these modes are not, it's not like you play, all right, I'm going to play F major and then I'm going to play F Dorian, that it relates to like, okay, this is the position of, here was the root, and I've just moved it up and I'm starting here. That was where my brain couldn't get it until you unlocked that bit. So if you're going on the assumption people already know that, then this looks good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, the biggest, I think, thing is you think, like we reference a lot jokingly, you know, like the Marty McFly. Like, you know, this is just G major and watch me for the changes. In my mind, the entire song needs to stay in major and in that pattern and in that mode. Otherwise, it's not major. But like Nate says, once you unlock the fact that you can even go from a major pattern into a minor pattern in relation to that major and it still works. That for me is a huge mind blower, that there's a way to even make that work.
So in this image, I'm planning on having the phrasing of I don't pick lemons, my aunt likes. I don't pick lemons, my aunt likes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to incorporate with this image where, like I said, I'm just going to move it to F major to make it easier, you know, move it up to the first fret so it matches all the others. Because this was a conundrum to me. Like, everyone starts in C major, but if I were to start these diagrams in C major, you could see here, it literally puts us not at the beginning of our guitar.
Yeah, F major is the way to go.
F major is the way to go. It just gets confusing if you start telling people sharps and flats, because F major has a B flat.
Yeah.
And when you do it in C major, there's no sharps and no flats.
I see. That makes sense.
Right. And so part of that is the conundrum of, you know, this is why those books have so many different pages and different things. But when you pick up the Guitar Grimoire, E Spanish minor, all it is the Phrygian mode. They're just calling it something else. It's just the Phrygian mode. Yeah. Look how many pages that book is. All right. And understand that everything between this image and this image, these two images, is everything in every page of that book. Can you hold up that book again? Yeah. How many pages is that book?
211.
211 pages, sir. All of that information in 2.
So it does, let's see, things it does go into, words that I've yet, you know, like you and I touched on them briefly, but like, you know, the Hungarian minor. Yeah. Here's F Lydian augmented. So
what is it? Just have the 5th raised a half step?
Yes.
There you go.
It's a lot of terminology.
So let's see. Let's find a Lydian. So the Lydian with a raised 5th is the melodic note. See if I can double check that with you too, because that's another important part of this. Is right here. See this Lydian right here?
Uh-huh.
It's the Lydian mode, and here's your raised 5th. right? And so you would just ixnay out that note. And there you go. Boom.
And they've got Phrygian major.
Phrygian major?
Yes.
What does that look like compared to a Phrygian mode?
It is a raised third.
Right. So what that really is that's harmonic minor.
Yeah.
It's called the Phrygian dominant, and it would be your harmonic minor note instead.
So yeah, they
of,
call that Phrygian major.
Yeah, because it has a major third. There's only 12 notes, so there can only be so many combinations. Yes, in these 5 diagrams, I don't have every single combination, but between the lot of them, yeah, it's just if you know what sounds these intervals make, I think it allows you the possibility of, as you study and you know what those other notes are, how to add in those quote-unquote chromatic notes. As long as I've been playing, I've known the phrase, in metal you can't hit a wrong note, because if you do, you ruin the song. In blues, if you hit a wrong note, you bend it till it's right, and in jazz, there are no wrong notes. And that phrase forever has been the withstanding question that I've been trying to ask, like why in jazz are there no wrong notes? If you listen to Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, it moves down playing proper intervals but moves chromatically. Same thing with Hotel California. Like if you use the right chord, you can go down chromatically and it sounds like it belongs. You look at that last picture I sent you guys. Up at the top, it's like learn the major note, 3 notes per string, and then find out how it's the same, where it differs from Lydian and Mixolydian. And then the minor, 3 notes per string, find out how it compares to Dorian, Phrygian, and Locrian. But then underneath that, in the terms, there are interval names, then I go into the diatonic and the 7 modes, then going into the pentatonic on how it's just minus the perfect 4th and the major 7th in the major scale. And then hexatonic on how it's these diatonic modes just minus the Lydian mode. You take out that interval, and that's your hexatonic, which is basically your pentatonic, but with 1 more note. For the blues, how it's the pentatonic plus a minor third interval in the major scale. And then again, going into harmonic and the melodic. And then we have dominant, which is the 5th, subdominant, which is a 4th, augmented, which means sharp 5, and then getting into what the triads are, sus2, sus4, and 7ths. And a triad is what all of our open chords are made out of. They're just made out of the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th interval. Every single open chord that you play that's a G major or G minor, it is the 1st of the scale, the 3rd of the scale, and the 5th of the scale. Thoughts on this stuff so far?
Yeah, I think it all looks really good.
Rob, what would you change about this?
I know you said that you're using purple because that's your color that's left, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about that kind of empty or hollow white. I wonder if that wouldn't be the way to go, is just to go with purple and then just use simple bullet points and underlining to break up, your sections. The fact that it's super bright.
Yeah, the brightness makes you happy, stimulating,
kind of exciting.
Yeah,
and not overwhelming. And that's why it's engaging sensory-wise, but not overwhelming. Like in marketing, they say steer away from that stuff. It's not a band T-shirt where you want it to be.
What if the main modes were in the purple?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Just for the background color. Things that we've kind of come up with some ideas for are the white notes and how to either define that or how to show people how that's a repeating note from another string, that it's the same pitch, a unison note. A unison note, not an octave note, right? Maybe something with that helix with the arrow and the X and showing how it moves. Maybe some sort of key or legend early on will be able to show that, the depiction maybe on the first
unison idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is wrong with all of this?
Bring it back up.
So you're saying that you would like to have the Ionian down here, then Dorian up above, Phrygian up above, Lydian, and then climbing instead.
Yeah.
Have the steps essentially walking up in the opposite directions from left to right. You'd be walking up the staircase as opposed to how it is here, the
Descending
David
down.
Bowie labyrinth upside down staircase.
So, and that's another thing. So my whole idea with this curriculum, the point of this, right? Clearly some of these images and information is out on the internet. It is not put together in a chronological form. So I'm looking to assemble this information in a chronological form. What I'm thinking about calling the curriculum is the philosophy of music theory, because everybody tells you the how, nobody tells you the why. You seem to understand a little bit more of the why when you look at it like this.
I agree. It also, in a sense, is that magic pill that everybody wants. You want to take a pill and be thin. You want to take a pill and be fit. You want to take a pill and just understand it. This is the clearest, most concise way I've ever seen it explained.
All right, so we've gone on what I think you guys like about it. We've gone on what you guys don't like about it. Now, Nate, what is missing?
I don't know that anything's missing. I'm planning to use this as like a print it out, laminate it, and have it as a nice cheat sheet for myself.
This whole page is like make a poster of it, put it up on your wall.
Yeah, it's very cheat sheet oriented versus the grimoire kind of monotonous information. It's shape based more so than like repetitive. Here this is an F, here this is an F sharp, here it is in G, here it is in G sharp, here it is in A flat. It looks good. I'm excited to like print it out and see it like printed and see the size of it and I can like start to use it.
I agree, because once you get into stuff like these books,
Yeah,
where it's just
I'd like to point out that this is how these started, by the way.
yeah, I've seen all of these from you.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's literally where it started. Look how confusing that is.
Yeah, no, that doesn't do
This
me any
says
good.
everything that this says, but too much of it, right?
Yeah,
And like I like this one because it gives you your grouping of interval names up here. It gives you different terms all in one image. So I really like that. This was the first one. This was the first breakthrough for me. This was the very first image where I took that F major image and started drawing in the blue notes. This was the very first one. Very archaic. You know, first digest it with the 2 octaves so you know where it's falling in. And this is how to just expand it. Right? Imagine if it was just an expansion pack to give you a little tiny bit more.
I like your expansion pack deal with that. That's cool.
Level up.
So yeah, so like this right here, it does all the things, it shows you all the things, but it doesn't tell you why.
No, it's not interesting enough. You just look at it and you're like, okay, I've already lost interest in this.
So this image right here, I want to take this idea and put it in the key of F major. I want to do it based off of power chords.
Yeah.
And do F major climbing up in power chords form.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you get to the diminished, because the only difference with the power chord for diminished is instead of being, in the case of F major, right, it would be E Locrian. Manson.
That was Manson. that was exactly what I heard too.
100%, right? But that is just that power chord, instead of a 12, 14, 14, is a 12, 13, 14. Because that's your flat 5. And I'm going to do it in power chord form, which won't have the third all of the time. It'll have the third up higher, like when we do those bar chords.
It should be fun. It doesn't feel like work if you're just playing. And, you know, that's the thing,
Right,
is
it won't feel like work
these,
if all you got to do is play.
That's it. And every last one of these loses that. I have yet to find anything that you could get in a physical thing or a PDF form where it follows that. Whereas this being like a linear thing, once you kind of start to you're just playing, and you could noodle and go back and forth from, like, you know, You get bored and you're just playing power chords or a song you know or something, and then you're right back into it. It keeps repeating. It's almost subconscious once you start to learn it, that then if you try to play a punk rock song or an intro to a song you know, all of a sudden the pattern pushes through, whether you like it or not.
And you're like, oh, son of a bitch.
Exactly. You're like, okay, so that's like Dorian. It makes sense. Very simplistic. It's such minimal memorizing versus what this is. Nobody, even that thin book, you're not memorizing that, but just memorizing these 7 main shapes and then seeing how they flow in and out, that's there. I'll tell you the one thing, my 2 big things is I think that at some point there needs to be that physical format that you can hold in your hand. And again, nice little bound thing that you can have.
No, look at this.
3-page
Sasquatch field guide. It's this laminated brochure thing. It folds out to 25 inches. This is it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's laminated,
simple, clean,
nice. You could get all of that information onto that.
This
absolutely.
guy who is making these graphics for me, not only did he do the layout for my album, as well as redrew my logos and stuff for me, but he also made me this. This is my pamphlet.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was pushing my school.
Yeah.
Yes.
That I would focus on that. Like those panels should be like 4 inches each.
Yeah, that trifold pattern.
This is a standard trifold.
Yeah, this is trifold 2 times over, I guess, because you fold it in half and then trifold it.
Can you measure that?
It's 20. It's got to be 24, because each of these panels are 4 inches.
Fretboard survival guide.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You know, the other thing though that's missing, and very few courses cover it, is the thumb and your positioning. And I don't know the best way for you to visually lay that out.
One transparent image that shows that more often than not, your thumb should be about there.
Oh, mine's way over here all the time.
Yeah, that sucks. That sucks. And that's why your pinky sucks. Because when you move your thumb over, your pinky gets more of that pinch strength as opposed to just its push strength. You need pinch strength, not just push strength. An image showing a spread out hand, maybe doing 2 whole step spread, showing where your thumb should be. And then an image doing the whole step, half step spread where the thumb should be. On those 2 shapes. That would be great to just literally put right aside the major shape, and the minor shape is just showing an overlay where the thumb should be approximately.
Yeah, like you do a little thing like this. You've got all sorts of places to just be like, here, proper hand placement.
I do it right off the bat from the second I show that major shape. This is where your thumb should be while you're doing this. After those big shapes and getting used to the 3 notes per string, because it's more linear that way, then I would touch on these shapes, which are the traditional shapes. Very clearly, the more complicated version of, even though it's the more traditional and less of a stretch, right, to grasp visually, it's more complicated to grasp this than it is to grasp the others, you know, because of where they put the root note and all this other shit. Because this, I like how it shows you the mode and then it shows you an arpeggio.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I've always kind of enjoyed, I know we did that, hell, I have one right here. I've always, it's right here in front of me, this exact sheet. I've always had this.
Let me see it.
Since one of our first lessons.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I've always had that here as a good
You literally
reference
printed
point.
that out.
Aside from laminating it, you know, it's right here, and it's always that constant reference. And yeah, no, this is one of my absolute favorite pieces of, again, media that it's right there. Yeah, I think, again, just to bring it back, it looks amazing. I think there's just those few little points and those few little tweaks.
So to clarify, start off with the major scale shape, then go into the minor scale shape and discuss where the thumb goes. Get into intervals and how the notes sound versus each other. If I do the major scale, you learn that. Then you learn the minor scale, you learn that. Then you find out, why does the major scale sound major? Why does the minor scale sound minor?
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. Then get into the 3 notes per string, how each one of these modes sounds and why they sound the way they do. Take that, explain with this diagram in a reverse order how these movements are being made.
You used like references like the Jetsons and the Simpsons and stuff, right? Whereas like more modern types of references than Happy Birthday and Kumbaya, and you used more modern stuff. And that was like, oh, yeah, okay, I like that sound. Okay, so that's what that is.
Along with the why, include an example.
Yeah.
A big thing is with interval definition is what is a minor second sound? What is a major second sound? What is a minor third sound? Yes. Example of the fourth is the first few notes of the wedding song.
Yeah. But then even like not on the interval side, on the mode side itself of just like, here's what this mode generally sounds like is Talk Dirty to Me by Poison. Like just some kind
it's like
reference.
Major songs is any happy song on the planet. So major would be like Star Wars. Dorian would be every jazz song on the planet. Phrygian would be anything that sounds kind of like a Mexican bad guy song, which is probably not PC. Lydian would be a sci-fi thing. Mixolydian is all rock and roll and AC/DC. Aeolian is every metal song on the planet. And Locrian, the only real examples you find of that are in classical music, Satriani, or Vai songs, like some of the weird ones.
Yeah, Malmsteen is who Nita said in her shit.
Because Locrian equals diminished. And then, so then after you getting into the modes and how to play those 7 notes, then it's where are the 5 missing notes and what kind of vibes do they give you? And like after understanding the vibe of the intervals and then the intervals that we use, we should have a better understanding for what sounds these intervals make. That should lead to a better understanding of what these 5 notes even do when you add them in. And alongside the scales, I'm going to have simple power chord forms of these chords going in the key of F major to learn along with this image that Nate hates to find out how to build.
Hey, it's a strong word. I loathe it.
Yeah.
And have that all in reference to that image on the paper where how the chords build. Again, having that cyclical clock. I got to figure out how, and this is going to be quite interesting for me to figure out how to make a 2D non-moving clock shape, explaining how these things just rotate. There's been plenty of like little placard things where you have like cutouts, and as you spin the wheel, it shows you what those things are. But I need one where you could see everything all at once without having to turn a wheel to see how to build a chord out of your triads, your 1, your 3, and your 5. Some of those I've sent you guys. This second one, like once I started drawing lines on it to show like the scale, it started looking confusing right off the bat. Like it looked better without any of the lines connecting them, but the lines connecting them really tells you what's going on.
It's keeping again in that linear.
I like that second one you sent without the lines.
Right.
I like the clock without the lines.
Yeah, I like that one the most. Let's see, hang on. The web one is kind of confusing.
So the very last one that came through is going to accompany in the very beginning. It's going to go with the major shape, minor shape, and then to the 3 notes per string.
Yeah, I like that format of showing the intervals, showing what's different about it. Like, okay, no.
Right, major 0 0, minor 0 0, right?
Yeah. Instead of like the flat 2, flat 5, down arrow 2, down arrow 5.
Part of this is music theory, sir.
Yeah, so that's where it's like you need that.
Right.
That dumps it down too much.
There is going to be a section of terminology that is going to go into that. Nate, you're probably going to hate this one that's coming through now because it's on graph paper.
I liked the clock one. That was on graph. Oh yeah, this one I can already tell.
But what I want you to look at is the center of it. Major alteration scale.
Where's the center? Let me get a ruler.
So for the Ionian position, it's 0 0. For Dorian, it's a flat 3, flat 7. For Phrygian, it's a flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. Right? And then over to the right. So it does that for all 7 of the modes. And then again, over to the right, it has the minor scale alteration.
Yeah. This is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Of.
I had just made like a quick reference to it because I'd already drawn it out on another piece of paper.
Yeah, having it as 2 columns. Yeah, that way I like that. That's good.
I was trying to make a quick reference because in here, you don't have to know that the Phrygian pattern is so different than the major pattern. Like, it's using too much brain power. You know, you don't have to know that the Phrygian pattern is the major pattern with 4 alterations, or that the Locrian pattern is the major pattern with 5 alterations, right? I feel like that's so much to grasp.
Yeah, that's
where
good.
the Locrian pattern, even from the minor,
Still has.
It has 2. It's the Lydian that has 4. Remember, because it starts at a different clock position. So the Locrian pattern on the minor one is the second one, not all the way at the bottom. Aeolian, Lydian, Aeolian, Locrian, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian.
Maybe even do like an LY and LO or something there for the L's.
Down on the bottom, I have the triads, the major modal intervals. If you want to have an Ionian chord based off your major scale, you're going to play the 1, the 3, and the 5. If you want a Dorian chord based off your major scale, you're going to play the 2, the 4, and the 6. You want a Phrygian chord based off your major scale, you're going to play the 3, the 5, and the 7. The Lydian, you're going to play the 4, the 6, and the 1, but it's really going to be the 8, right? It's going to be up high. For Mixolydian, you're going to play the 5, the 7, and the 9. I wrote 2, but it's going to be the 9. And for the Aeolian, you're going to play the 6, the 8, and then 10th. And it's like, that's like learning how to like make simple triad chords based off of the major scale.
Yeah, this one's good.
I agree.
That clock position one just gets confusing once you draw the lines in, right? And it gets that way.
Yeah.
That was me trying to figure out, like, how do I get a 2D shape in some sort of thing where you can't move something to hide stuff.
Yeah, but that's like by the time you get it off graph paper and maybe with some colored lines, like change the colors of the lines to be like, look, this is where this connects.
And this circle one here that I drew, the circle one that has the highlight.
Yeah, that one looks like the arc reactor and Tony Stark. Like,
yeah, 100%, right? Like, I tried to see, again, this is me trying to figure out how to make a clock shape, and it makes it so hard to visualize. Like, all the information is there.
Mm-hmm. But again, maybe once that's not in handwriting and like in something more digital, that might not look terrible.
So we've gone over what you like. We've gone over what you don't like. We've gone over things that you would change. We've gone over things that you think are missing. Final thoughts.
I don't think I can elaborate more on what I've already hit.
I think the only thing that's missing visually from what we've shown is how, just going back from how you and I started, Dean. Lesson 1 was your rules, your journey, your stuff that would obviously kind of come before this. And then, of course, the absolute basics, should they be needed for a very first time guitar player. Stupid things that everybody seems to miss, especially when you're not in person with someone, like, oh, no. Like, try holding it like this. And again, the thumb positioning and your hand positioning and stuff like that. Outside of that, as you start to get into the format of this layout, I agree with you, starting with giving 2 main shapes and then talking about your whole steps, your whole half steps, etc., and how it relates to the modes and stuff. The other thing is, you have made, and granted I still only have 1 in my collection, but you're the only person to ever, for somebody who is very much a 6-string guitar player, you have made the only really rock solid argument as to why a 7-string guitar is so important when learning this stuff, and how these 3 notes per string can lay out how, even if you refuse to ever be a 7-string player, how to understand that and how that helps with the format and our revolving door. That, again, I think that's the big thing, is coming up with a definitive name for that empty white note.
Yes, I instantly regretted getting rid of my 7-string guitar once we started lessons. It's like, oh, damn it. That did have a purpose.
And again, another expansion is the 7-string pack, right? You'll get your quick little brief little touch here on how it lines up on a 7 string and how the pattern just repeats, because you get to see a better representation of that, and that will be another expansion 7 string version.
Even Rob's point of like the beginner stuff is all of my knowledge of major, I knew those shapes, but I knew them not as the 3 note per string one. It was those first 2 notes were on the E string. And it's funny, I can't pull those out of my head right now.
Well, you know what's funny is your traditional shapes, if they're not in the first position, right, like in minor and in the Phrygian, they're basically your traditional shapes. But things like the major and the Lydian and the Mixolydian, those secondary shapes start in your second octave. So if you just didn't play the 7th note and you started at the second octave of those 3 notes per string,
that's where
that's where the traditional shapes are hidden. They're in that shape.
So that was one of the big things too, because I knew that stuff. I knew those 2 shapes and I knew pentatonic, but it wasn't until the 3 note per string. It's like, wait a minute. Okay, this just shifted the whole diagram for me, and I had to relearn it, but it made a lot more sense once you do.
Final point for me, I just sent you guys a PDF document of the Dean's List. And so along with all of this, again, it's the philosophy of music theory, right? So this is not going to be just the how, but the why. And along with that is going to come, and I haven't expanded upon all of these. As you get towards the end, it gets less and less of a description for each. But I have these little nuggets that I'm going to put in there to maybe either start off an exercise, start off a chapter, whatever, to go along with it, to give reading material alongside of it, where it's kind of like just some best practice, mindsets to
Absolutely.
keep along
Does
with it.
this touch on, I believe, slowing down to going fast, which is still
it's there. Rule number 5. If you want to fly, you must learn to run with sea legs instead of crawling with crutches. Playing needs to evolve. You need to grow.
Exactly.
You need to go slow and focus on the timing of your left hand and right hand alignment. When you shred through a lick at lightning speed, you're not hearing your finite mistakes. Those are your shortcomings. No matter how experienced a player, they have flaws in their technique somewhere. Those flaws for professionals typically come from comfort and eventual laziness on phalangeal posture from the millions of hours of play. So and with all this, it's going to be sprinkled in there. I haven't figured it all out. It's as I get it all, I'm going to be assembling it. It's like if I wanted to space this out, like lesson 1 of these missing notes would be breaking down the melodic and adding that in. Lesson 2 would be adding the blues. Lesson 3, the quest. Lesson 4, the harmonic. Lesson 5, the bebop. Each one of these breaking down one at a time.
Yeah, I could see you doing that too, like the video series of this. Like, here, this is this section, and look at your thing. This is what's happening.
Yeah, your quick reference chart that you could always come back to your quick reference chart. And then you could do the deep dives. 99% of people want that red pill, that quick fix, that cheat sheet. I don't want to go through something that's going to take me, even though it's a lifelong journey, to be able to, in 2 or 3 lessons, and be able to play and have fun with it. And then go on your journey, but feel like you have a grasp.
You gotta grab attention quick and give progress quick.
You start off with a simple major shape, 8 notes, right? Second shape is minor shape, 8 notes. Then I get into the intervals. Then we go right into the 7 modes. And along with those 7 modes, you see how they all directly line up together. After the 7 modes, then it goes into the whole half thing, right? After you've already played it, then you go into the why, right? And then after that, go into the simple colored fretboards, right? With the yellow, blue, orange, pink, and green. Then you get down to that little legend, if you will. And then you would expand into maybe the traditional shapes and stuff like that. And I feel like you get so much playability first.
Mm-hmm. With that having it all in one page where it's not that chord Bible poster.
For guitar, we learn that pattern in C, and to play it in C sharp, we play that exact same pattern up a half step. When I do the major shape, it's going to be explained like in this context. Learning it in F major, in F sharp major, it's exactly the same shape, just starting on the 2nd fret. G major, exactly the same shape, starting at the 3rd fret. Either A flat major or G sharp major, whatever, exactly the same, starting on the 4th fret.
Yeah, the only time it changes is when you drop down a string, and then
or that B string to G string. But again, that's going to be going backwards. It's almost like, even though I say quite the opposite, it's like learning how to run before walking. Or to the extent of what Matt and I were saying yesterday, he called it the cold trickle effect. It's from the movie Days of Thunder. It's so many drivers of cars don't understand the physics of the motor, whether it be the chemical composition in the cobalt level in the block, making it stronger, able to deal with more heat, able to be pushed harder. Drivers don't understand that. Very many guitar players don't understand the physics that go down to the pickups or the wood, or the difference of one of the things we touched on was Eddie Van Halen screwing his humbucker into the wood instead of having it sit on the springs in a pick guard.
Yep, direct mount.
Direct mount, because you get noise from those springs if that spring tension isn't right. And these little things like that, like, so many of the drivers don't know how to tune the car. This book that I have, Total Scales, Techniques, and Applications. Lessons for beginner through professional. Master every note, every scale, every position, every key on the entire fretboard. And then there's no rhyme or reason as to all of this shit.
So what you're telling me is you went through the program and you still don't have the keys to the Lamborghini. That's what you're trying to tell me.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. This one's going right in recycling. This one has no.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm sure there's something. It's like everything. Everybody has something to bring to the table. Every student has something that they can teach you as a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. So I know there's something of value somewhere in this, but again,
but it takes too much to comb. You say so. I guess what you're saying is it takes too much to comb through
to find the value.
Where it's like Spaceballs. We ain't found shit.
Yeah. Exactly. I've spent all this time, and again, I'm glad. I know it works for people because it worked for my buddy, but it didn't work for me, and it didn't work for Nate. And I look at Nate and I as very much like all of us, but we are that everyman guitar player metalhead. And if we don't get it right off the bat, I know there is that percentage who gets it. I know there's those Mathenis who everything. They see all of this like the Terminator. But for us, yours is so applicable. It's so transparent. There's no jargon. You don't have to be a member of the club to be able to get started. And I think that's why we have felt, my brother as well, and other friends of mine and players, once I get good enough, I could take lessons with someone like a Dean.
That was what it was. Even Rob's point too, of like, me and Rob tried this for years before even it was a nugget of an idea to start talking to you, where we would talk like, let's try, maybe we try this method, let's try this one. And none of it ever worked. So the fact that you worked for both of us, if it was Rob got it, but it went over my head.
The guy's who's doing the graphics, Ryan Miller, before I ever did a lesson with him, right? I was sending him these pictures, talking about how I wanted to turn them into digital images. In that 2-hour conversation on the phone, looking at the way I laid it out, he said he understood more than he learned from 3 teachers.
Yeah.
Of course.
Which are all using the same old other shit. So yeah, your method works. It's just...
What's the biggest benefit you guys see with the method besides the kind words, right? What are the mechanical advantages that you see off of this method that made things clear for you? What's the mechanical advantage?
I think the simplicity of it, the fact that essentially you could boil it down to those simple 3 shapes of or patterns of a whole, half whole, little bites that within several bites you have the whole thing. You don't have to go 6 months into a plan. See how it could be as simple as Happy Birthday or as complicated as the solo from Floods, and how that translates into ninths. But when you break it down, it's really just 3 shapes. And when you hold your instrument correctly, when you have the correct ergonomics, and you relax and you just follow these 3 simple patterns in a certain sequential order, you have Yngwie or Happy Birthday. You have things that you're like, holy shit, if I had the technique and the practice, I could play things that are unattainable to play. You're showing someone how, with a few simple steps, you could go to Gold's Gym and lift 400 pounds. being my size.
So you're saying that it's taking the major shape and the minor shape, and then intervals, breakdowns, why those two sound the way they do, and then how they go through the 7 modes, pointing out the characteristic notes. You're saying that by jumping through these simple points of view, it gets you off to a quicker starting point.
Of course. Yeah, it's showing you how to, and again, you want to slow down, which that's just an inherent problem of all of us guitar players who want to shred, that you can shred. Even though it's a lifelong journey, it's not going to take you a lifetime to get there if you put in the time, because it's right there. And then one of the other really cool things is how if you take a minute to break it down, these simple shapes can then all of a sudden become a chord that isn't just those standard open chords. You don't need this whole book. You do if you want to know the name is a B flat minor 7th.
Yeah, but if you know if you learn the intervals,
but then again, you can sit
right
there
off the bat,
break it down and say that's a minor,
B flat, and
7.
you have a minor 7.
Exactly.
1
So
5 minor 7.
Because none of us are memorizing this. We're not Pat Metheny. It's just not gonna happen. We have short attention spans. We grew up with Sesame Street and The Simpsons, dude. That's our attention span. Anytime it gets overwhelming, it's the shortcuts that we all use when you take a test and you're like, I do, and the answer is 46. As soon as you start it, that's my favorite thing is if I ever forget, I know that you would have no problem with me because you would rather me go, well, I don't pick, and find that.
Yeah.
Because that's how you find it. Granted, a lot of years, a lot of practice, a lot of time.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm quicker is because I've done it longer.
But that's all it is it's that.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I do the count. It's like, wait, okay, this would be here. Yep, this is here. Yep, okay, I found it.
Fretboard navigation, right? Like that term gets used a lot. Almost like everyone's always looking for their way, so to speak. Really what I'm looking for right now in my head is like I'm looking for so many key terms, key phrases, things to name stuff, things that are catchy, right? And this almost sounds like a Hansel and Gretel kind of thing, where it's like you leave the breadcrumbs, but then the breadcrumbs aren't there, right? How do you leave a breadcrumb trail and know that the breadcrumbs are not gonna get eaten up? Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, part of my drawback with this system is how quick people learn it.
Well, that is a drawback where, once you learn it, I mean, in theory, we continue lessons because there's a lot of technique stuff. There's a lot of other stuff that goes beyond, because you can make this a very quick basic package like Anita or anybody else where, hey, $89.95, $49.95, whatever, you get this and you can break it down, the main meat and potatoes of it on a trifold pamphlet. However, once you get that and you get the taste of it.
That's also my detriment,
But once you get the taste of it, though, there's always more that you're like, well, what about this? Or you just opened that door. So now if you really have the passion for the journey, you're like, but wait, there's more, and there is so much more you could go in that you need that level up pack, that extension pack, that there's more to it. But again, I think that is the simplicity of why it works, is your detriment is also why it would be one of the most, if not the most fun and successful packages. Because again, you don't need to take lessons with me for the rest of your life to get it.
Yeah, but at the same time, like how much of our ability to learn this stuff quickly was because of you and not that it was written down on a sheet.
Nate and I both have these books that have very crispy binding.
Oh, they're crisp.
Because I've never gotten to the back and opened it up front and back and everything else, whereas that
I have the opposite.
We would rip the laminate out of.
I have the opposite with these books, but I still feel the same way you do.
Mm-hmm. That you went through it all.
You could almost do like a video lesson plan of like where it's trickled instead of like, film it all. But then it's like, okay, here's lesson 1. And then you're not going to have access to lesson 2 until 4 days from now. And then it gives them time to be, and like Rob said, that accountability. You're like, okay, well, in a week, that's when I'm going to have access to the other one. I should really let this stuff focus in so that when that one comes, there's something to look forward to, something to happen. Mm-hmm. And then it's more of a structured kind of thing. And then
it is structured, and it goes with like the hype of someone like dropping an album. Like it's coming.
I want to make a very big point of something that you guys have both said over and over and over again, which is starting and not finishing.
Yeah.
That seems to be everybody's issue, starting and not finishing. I have to be so very careful about this because, you know, that's why I was saying where I could drop that whole image of the melodic, the blues, the quest, the harmonic, and the bebop. I could drop the whole image, or I could break it up into sections because of digestibility. Now, what would make people do it more is drop the whole image and let them play what they want, or break it down one at a time. Right?
Yeah, there has to be that digestion point.
Attention span has come up so many times here. And again, I feel like I'm better off making big, fast moves instead of drawing it out. Because what do I really care about, right? Why do people draw out? Why would they draw out a curriculum? Like, why do they do that,
your
right?
6-month program, your 18-month
They want more
program.
money.
Yeah.
What do I want? I want the person who's looking at this to get it. That's all I want.
Well, that's why I think, again, having that
That's my
reference,
detriment, right?
that laminated reference sheet that you get, and then now there's breakdowns. Here, I have the whole book. It's all here, but I have to do it. I can see it all. What's cool about yours is I'll see it all.
Where did you
and
just
it can
open up
almost
to?
Makes sense.
The middle.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You just Star Wars that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And that's
What did
my
I say
point.
was
That's what I'm
device
trying
framing?
to do.
Well, that's the hardest part, right? The first
Nobody
step.
wants to see all of this lettering. You know what this is? This is the table of contents of this book.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Puke.
Yeah, no one cares. Yeah, no one gives a shit.
No one wants to see that. No one wants an entire page on dampening or harmonics or an entire page of artificial harmonics. Dude, they want to learn how to do all that shit now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It's not very rock and roll. Whereas yours is simple.
It's amazing. In this whole book, I get all the way to page 102 out of 176 pages that they show you the 7 modes and how they're easy shapes.
Why aren't we starting there?
It's that episode 4, 5, and 6 stuff that seems to spark the epiphanetics. How do you like that word?
Epiphanetics.
It
Sparks your all of your eureka moments.
That's exactly what it is. It's that with us, it's been that aha moment.
Yeah, and that's what kept the interest there, was like, oh, I get it. What else can I get now?
I never wanted to learn scales in the beginning because I feared that it would take away my creativity in the picking and poking. I don't want to be limited to the 7 notes that are there. I want access to all 12 notes all of the time. Because in the beginning, when I picked up my guitar, that's how I made music. I just poked and then got stuff. Because I like to write songs, right? I don't want to just play songs. I want to write songs. And when you write songs, you got to use those other things that other people aren't doing. Remember I showed you that the major scale with all the blue notes drawn in, and I said this is the very first sheet that I ever made on this journey. The reason for that is after I discovered there were 7 modes because there were 7 notes, so there's 7 different starting positions, like 7 staggered racers in a race, right, at the beginning. Once I realized that, and then I looked up, I was like, oh, let me go look up like the blues scales, right? And I looked up the blues scales, and there's 6 notes in the blues scale, but they only ever show you 5 positions. So I was like, well, what's the 6th? And then how about that? I found a 7th position to the blues scale because, you know, there's 8 positions because then they're starting on the blue note. So really, I have 3 more positions of the blues scale that are not in any book. Think about that, because when you put the blue note into the diatonic modes, you make an 8-note scale. There's 8 positions now, as opposed to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there was something, I don't remember what it was. If I remember, I'll get to it. I'll send it to you. But there was definitely even one of those epiphany moments not all that long ago where it's like, oh my God, I understand this now. Like it hit me. It's like, oh, I finally get it. Just because you stumble across it. Like, oh, there it is. That's what it was.
The last thing I'll say, and then I do got a boogie, is also, I don't think I told Nate, or maybe I did put it on the group thing, but I signed up for this, one of those online things. It just struck my attention because their selling point is something similar to yours. Is we're going to make this very simple and digestible by teaching you the 7 feelings. And with those 7 feelings, which is essentially a way of doing the 7 modes, 3 note
Does it come with a pink hat?
Yeah,
Well,
what are the feelings? Happy, sad? What are
that's what I was curious. And then, of course, it's like every course. They want you to get into it, and then they want you to buy everything, and it could easily become a $10,000 investment. But just to get in the door and get the first thing, but you don't want the first, it's one of those things where it's selling you all the shit. But I was like, no, I just want the $27 one-time package to get in, just to see what the 7 feelings are, 3 note per string, and how you break that down. Because I want to take that and bring it back to this conversation and see how that works with this. And see if there's anything in there that's worth talking about.
I make these ambient backing tracks with my guitar, and then I shred the different modes over them.
6-minute abs, right?
Yeah. Guitar yoga.
I got a boogie. I love you guys. Take care. Have a great day. Let's do this again soon.
Peace out, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. So I want to just take a second here and reflect. I learned a lot of good things. Got to figure out what to do with the white notes. I should think about the feelings and the examples of each of the 7 modes. I have to re-stagger the whole, half stagger chart. Start with Ionian on the bottom and work up towards Locrian. I should make everything fast-paced. That's where I'm going to go with this. I don't care about I don't care about holding on to a student forever anymore. I want whoever looks at this to instantly get it. That's what I want. That's what I've always wanted. So I might do expanded lessons, but we're looking for maybe a trifold kind of deal. Start with the major shape 8 notes, and then go to the minor shape 8 notes, explain the intervals, then explain the 7 modes and why they, how each of those modes is just a simple variation of either the major or the minor, then jump directly into and maybe do the whole bulk thing. Yeah, do the whole bulk thing of the melodic blues, quest, harmonic, and bebop note. And then I have my key down here. I'm going to move the top diagram from C major to F major. Again, figuring out what's going on with that white note, which really only presents itself there and right here, which the white notes are just the black notes. Just the normal notes of the scale, but they're not in the pattern that I want you to know. I want you to focus on a specific pattern. Come up with chords in the key of F major, maybe thirds, ninths, stuff like that, power chords. Going up and down, showing people where the accents are. When I do the major and minor scale, I'm going to talk about how the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 5 are neutral notes, the 3, the 6, and the 7 are the accent notes, and it's actually bringing those down a half step from the majors, what gives you the minor shape. So even those 2 are extremely similar, but alter by 3 notes, as opposed to the normal, or on average, 1 note difference between all the 7 modes, and then 2 note difference from the minor shape to the Locrian shape. It has a flat 2 and a flat 5. Some of these diagrams are hard to see when they're on the graph, but maybe once they're in final image, they will be good. After all of that, maybe like episode 5 is episode 4, and episode 5 would maybe start off with the traditional modes. I think that's what it's going to be. think we're going to call it the future philosophy of music theory. FPMT. Yeah, something like that. All right. Thank you very much, everybody on Patreon. This is only the beginning. Oh, yeah, I don't have that anymore.